Hey everyone, I'm MR Gunn, or Mr. Gunn, or just Gunn, another artist on the internet that draws ladies. It only took me about 5 years, but I finally bought a decent microphone so I can start recording and uploading videos. I'm hoping to eventually make this my full-time career and help other artists along the way. Do I need a fancy intro animation or something? Let me know in the comments. As some of you may have noticed, this artwork is of Silk from Marvel Comics. She was picked by my patrons over at Patreon during a recent poll. This video is meant to be sort of a self-introduction, but I'm going to explain a lot of what I'm doing as well, since I assume that's probably what most of you want to see. Also, this video took over 8 hours to make, so if I sped the video up enough to do just 1 minute of introduction, I'm pretty sure I would need to add a seizure warning to it. I started out by doing some gesture drawings. These are a great way to get a lot of ideas out quickly and kind of solidify the poses you're going to go with moving forward. Gestures are also a really good way to warm up and a way to work through artist block. You don't need to start every drawing this way, but it really helps when you don't have a concrete idea of what you want. And even if you don't use one of the poses for what you're working on, you can always go back and use it for something else later down the line. And they're fun to do. At least I think they're fun to do. It's kind of like the upgraded version of stickmen drawings. I'm going to take a break from the art for a moment and just ask, who's excited to see Spider-Verse 2? Or, if you're coming from the future, how was Spider-Verse 2? I guess it's called Across the Spider-Verse, but whatever, you know what I'm talking about. I feel like they set such a high bar with the first one that they're gonna have a really hard time following up and not having people get disappointed. I think bringing in all of these obscure multiverse characters is actually pretty interesting. And so far it's worked out really well for them. I've kind of fallen off of the whole Marvel Cinematic Universe stuff, but I think this will be a nice refresher. But I'll be honest, I want to see Carnage Venom. Who doesn't want to see Carnage Venom? Come on, it's Spider-Man. Or even some of the more obscure symbiote suits would be pretty cool. I mean, Scream? Nobody cares about Scream, but it'd be cool to see. Or Lasher. Lasher was cool. He had tentacles. Think of the possibilities. Not like that. Never mind. Anyhow, let's get back to the art. After making the painstaking decision on what pose I'm going to go with, I'll blow it up and start refining and tweaking the sketch. Using selections and the warp tool is a good way to change shapes without having to redraw them. Highly recommend. You'll also notice that instead of erasing some of the line work, I'll actually use the smudge tool to start creating form and shading, and I'll use the eraser to kind of cut back some of the shapes and refine edges. I don't always start this whole rendering process in black and white, and I find that it's kind of a double-edged sword. You can get your tonal values in really quickly and start shading early on, but at the same time, it sometimes causes issues to get the colors to appear the way you want. They may look a bit muddy. This happens a lot with skin tones especially. You'll see me struggle with some of these issues later on in the video. Once I get a good base to work off of, you'll notice I block in a lot of it with a gradient brush. I'll then go in with the eraser to create some shapes or cut out some shapes, lighten some areas, and create some textures. My eraser isn't a perfect flat circle, it actually has some texture to it. It's a custom brush I made a while back. This is strictly a personal preference thing. I wouldn't say that it adds any sort of benefits over a round brush or a square brush or whatever you prefer using in your own work. About 90% of the time I only use a few brushes that I made. I like to keep them pretty simple, and honestly they're not that different from some of the default brushes that come with Photoshop. I'm a big believer in the idea that you can still make great art with the default brushes. However, you do have a lot of other tools at your disposal that will help make your work a lot easier, such as the pen tool. Using the pen tool to create selections and masks can save you a lot of headache later down the line. And if you didn't already know, you can actually copy your masks to other layers, then add or remove from those masks depending on what you need on that specific layer. Tutorial on masks, anyone? They're pretty simple. I'm pretty sure that tutorial will be about 1 minute long at most. But let me know if there's any tools you see me use here that you do want to know more about. By the way, if you have any recommendations or suggestions on the videos, please leave a comment below. I'm not a video editor or an audio guy, so I'm kind of new to all this. If you have any issues with me being so monotone though, I think you're out of luck. Maybe one day I'll be able to hire a professional editor. We'll see. Also, I live out in the middle of the woods and the birds are going nuts right now. So if you think you hear chirping, you're not going crazy. Just think of it as additional background music. So now I'm using the Liquify tool to change the shape of the legs slightly. The Liquify tool is a great way to slightly change shapes and forms in a more controlled method than the Warp tool. The Liquify tool actually has its own set of tools within it. This gives you a really high degree of precision, but can be sometimes kind of finicky. It's also a little more CPU intensive. But overall, with the amount of precision and the different ways you can make changes, like the bloat tool, for example, makes the Liquify tool well worth using despite those minor annoyances. After that, I sketched in the details of the suit and where I'm going to make selections and fills later. It's important to create these lines as if they were flowing with the curves of the body. A little tip for anybody who might have issues doing this: you can use fishnet or other grid-like materials and patterns as a sort of loose reference for how this material would wrap around the body. This can help you visualize how a pattern or a decal would change with the position or the limbs or the torso. This isn't a perfect method, but it's pretty useful for those of us that don't have a 3D modeling program. For the background, you probably saw that I used a stock photo. This is from a free stock photo site called Pexels. P-E-X-E-L-S. They don't sponsor me or anything. I occasionally use stock photos to give myself kind of a general idea of colors and lights. It's also helpful for things like cityscapes where it's an extremely busy image. But as you'll see, I'll end up painting over a lot of it. The end result became this almost out of focus, abstract mishmash of city lights and blocky shapes. My goal here was more to highlight the character than to put any details into a sprawling cityscape. I'm sure the cityscape would have looked way more impressive, but honestly, I'm pretty happy with how it came out in the end. Also, this video is long enough as is. Then it's on to more details in the suit. The easiest method for me here was just to make a bunch of selections of thin lines and then fill them in. Since these are such small areas, they're not really going to require a whole lot of shading or detail inside of them. These areas don't have to be super precise as long as they give you the impression that they're flowing with the character's body. After this, I'll go in and actually paint the face. Because she's wearing a mask, this ends up being really quick. We just have to focus on the eyes and shadows from her hair. One mistake a lot of beginner artists make here is that they make the whites of the eyes actually white. The whites of the eyes are never actually white. I also frame the face with hair on a different layer so that I can see more precisely where the shadows are going to lay on her forehead. This also allows me to paint the shadows without having to mess up the hair or paint over the hair. After that, it comes to painting the background, and honestly, there's not a whole lot to say about it. It's just kind of laying down gradients and colors and seeing what works and what doesn't. It's just a lot of trial and error, honestly. Now on to the hair. It took me a very long time to get decent at painting hair. I've learned over the years that with hair, it's kind of a less is more sort of situation. You really want to focus more on large shapes instead of individual strands. It's more akin to painting layers of ribbons than it is actual hair. When in doubt, start out simple and just kind of work your way from there. Select large portions of it and just kind of render it big chunks at a time. It's never a bad idea to just start with a large brush and kind of work your way smaller. The most important thing is to make the hair flow in a way that is aesthetically pleasing to the whole piece. You'll even see in some artwork that they'll leave the hair as a solid color with no rendering at all. But as long as the flow is good, it looks good. So let's finish up this hair and then move on to the other details. For her webbing, I kind of took the complete opposite approach as I did to the hair, and I focused on small individual strands and made it really stringy looking. I wanted these strands to vary in width as they flow throughout the piece, to kind of give an indication of it coming in and out of light. I'll emphasize this a bit more later by painting darker gradients in. I want these strands to be visible, but still have the effect of when you see a spider web shining in the sunlight. Now it's on to rendering the suit. I struggled a bit with getting the shine on the suit looking the way I wanted. I'm not perfect, we all run into challenges, but we got there in the end and I think it looked pretty good. It has a nice shine to it without looking like vinyl. After that, it's just painting in the small details, the rim lighting, and some additional tweaks to the background until it feels done. The goal with all of my artwork is to make it look good enough that I can show it to people without feeling shameful. And speaking of shameful, it's time to shamefully plug my Patreon. While I do appreciate any and all support, my patrons get exclusive perks such as being included at the end of this video, the rights to vote on what I draw, getting sneak peeks on current things I'm working on, as well as access to some of my work files. And probably the most popular, they get to see the other stuff that I can't post anywhere because spice. I also have a store where you can buy prints and stickers. Go check that out if it's something you're interested in. Or follow me on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and all those other things that I kind of upload stuff on sometimes. And if you made it this far into the video, then I want to thank you for watching. I hope this helps some of the people out there, or at very least was entertaining. And a special shout out to my patrons on Patreon, who, as I said at the beginning of the video, voted on Silk being the character today. You're all awesome and I truly appreciate all the support and motivation you provide me. Please like, share, subscribe, and click whatever other buttons below that look fun. Feel free to make suggestions on what sort of videos you'd like me to make in the future, or if you have any questions about my process, a certain tool I used, or other art-related stuff, please leave a comment below. I'll do my best to answer any other questions, and I just might make a tutorial about it if enough people are interested in it. Or feel free to be that guy who comments first as the first, third, or fourth even person to comment on the video. Everybody likes to see those guys. I won't judge. Take care everyone, keep drawing, and until next time.